Indie developers and industry giants alike are redefining space games. This is a revolution that might just be the most exciting thing you didn't see coming. I'm talking about a new frontier of space exploration, a frontier not defined by billion-dollar budgets or massive development teams, but by the limitless imagination of the lone games developer. Yet, in the midst of this apparent revolution, Bethesda's Starfield is taking a different path. Let's navigate then through this evolving universe of space games, explore the paradoxes, the pioneers, and the promising future that lies ahead. The titans of space gaming went big. Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen have given us the chance to explore the cosmos from the comfort of our own homes. But have you noticed how both games have struggled to provide a truly deep gameplay? What about No Man's Sky? A game that is truly awesome with just so many options. But again, a game with a huge amount of breadth rather than depth. So what about truly deep gameplay? Where can we find this? Well, in recent years, this is something that seems to be changing. We've seen a surge in indie developers entering the scene, bringing with them innovative ideas and a fresh perspective. These developers, often working with limited resources, are creating games that are not only unique, but also deeply engaging. They focus on specific aspects of space exploration, creating games that focus on depth of gameplay. Meanwhile, games like Elite Dangerous, once a beacon in the genre, are showing signs of decline. This then is a shifting landscape, and it's one that is creating opportunities for new players to emerge and for innovation to thrive. Let's start our journey with Flight of Nova. This is an indie gem that is a space flight game that emphasizes realistic flight mechanics. Of course, it's not the first space game to focus on Newtonian physics and orbital mechanics. This is something that was included in Frontier Elite 2 all the way back in the early 90s. Yet, Flight of Nova is far from a nostalgia trip. It takes the foundation laid by other Newtonian flight games and builds upon them with modern technology and design principles. The result is a game that feels both familiar and fresh. It's an illustration of how developers are building games around laser-focused concepts. Rather than going broad like Elite Dangerous or No Man's Sky, they're instead aiming for depth. With Flight of Nova then docking, entering and leaving orbit, atmospheric re-entry and even landing upon a planet's surface, all of these are player-focused skills which require development and practice. Knowledge of orbital mechanics can also help here to a degree, and all of this makes Flight of Nova a very compelling experience. Now, here's a question for you. What was your best combat experience in a game? It doesn't have to be a space game, any genre will count here. Ask yourself, how did that game pull off such a great experience for you? Was it maybe because the developers refined and further refined that particular combat mechanic? Well, Hunternet Starfighter places a laser focus on combat, emphasizing again depth over breadth. And here you'll find fast-paced, space combat. The game rekindles the exhilaration of classic dogfights whilst infusing it with a modern twist. It offers a thrilling experience that demands skill and teamwork. Now, whilst Hunternet Starfighter does bring back the thrill of classic space dogfights with a modern twist, it's worth acknowledging that games that laid the foundation for this type of intense combat gameplay. Games like Wing Commander and X-Wing released in the 80s and 90s, and they captivated players with their exhilarating space battles and simulated cockpits. These iconic titles set the bar for skillful and immersive space combat experiences. So by placing a strong emphasis on the depth of combat, developers CPU Dreams have crafted an incredibly impressive combat mechanic. It highlights that focusing on depth rather than breadth can lead to amazing results, as well as a game that feels like a complete experience. I recently spoke on this very subject to Fernando, the developer behind CPU Dreams and Hunternet, and he had the following thoughts on the topic. He said, "I value both depth and breadth, but it is systematic depth that keeps me playing. With depth comes replayability, which is crucial for communities to survive. I also want to keep playing Hunternet with my friends as long as we like without worrying about running out of content. A game that lacks depth will run dry without a steady stream of new content, but systematic depth can be mined forever." Spacebourne 2 is all about player agency. Now, on first glance, it might seem that the focus here is on breadth rather than depth, But after all, this ambitious title is open universe RPG and third-person shooter that offers a wide array of gameplay elements, including role-playing, mining, trading, piracy, crafting, and exploration. It's reminiscent of the grand scope of games like Elite Dangerous, but here there is a twist. As you delve deeper into the game, it becomes apparent that Spacebourne 2 isn't just about breadth, it truly does focus on fleshing out that deep experience with well thought out game mechanics. Although I must say, and I really do want to point out that at this point, that as I've said in the past, the game is extremely janky. Some people feel that is a part of the title's charm, other people, well, not so much. At any rate, player agency is something that has always been appealing to me. Yet unfortunately, it sometimes feels that bigger games remove player agency and replace it with short repeating game loops, otherwise known as grind. That isn't true player agency as far as I'm concerned. It is a time sink, a Skinner box that allows developers to create the illusion of a deep game. Spacebourne 2, on the other hand, genuinely focuses on how players interact with the world. This concept extends to each part of the game, from its rich diplomacy system, the options you have when it comes to piracy and other activities, as well as things such as ship modification. Player agency then really does seem to be a focus here. For example, you can establish your own faction, decide on its internal operations, policies and management structure. You can capture other stations, construct new ones, or even aim to become the supreme ruler of the galaxy. It's a game then that really does let you carve your own path. Now, have you ever noticed how modern games have taken true decision making out of players' hands? Now, decision making is a little bit different in terms of player agency, where player agency allows you to truly decide what you want to do and where you want to do it. Player decision is all about consequences, making a decision and then watching the consequences of that decision unfold. It's something we don't see happen very much in games nowadays, with games getting a little bit too easy and holding players' hand. Games where there's always markers for the next quest or glowing lines for the player to follow. Alternatively, in live service games where decision making has been replaced with repeating game loops that lead to unlocks and progress bars. True decision making then is all but disappearing from many modern games. Enter Fallen Frontier, a game that's still in development but just might redefine how games approach the depth of decision making. Here, every choice you make, from the design of your ships to the placement of your recon stations, has a significant impact on your success, or at least according to what we know so far and have been told about the game. It's a game that harkens back to strategy games of the 80s and 90s, games like Homeworld, where every decision mattered and strategy was king. But Fallen Frontier takes this concept and applies it to the space genre in a way that we haven't seen before. The game is set in a star system filled with planets, moons, asteroid fields and nebula. It's a game that emphasizes ship design, recon and logistics, but according to the developers, what sets Fallen Frontier apart is its focus on decision making. It's not simply about building the biggest fleet, but about building the right fleet for the tasks at hand. It's about making strategic decisions that will affect the outcome of your campaign. Now, Fallen Frontier goes even further. It introduces a level of depth rarely seen in space games. For example, your command crews are not just abstract entities, they are named individuals with rank, portraits and identities. Each officer has their own traits and abilities, and this makes personnel choice a critical factor in efficient flotilla composition. What's more, if your command crew are captured, they may be tortured and reveal precious intel. Fortunately, you will have the option to mount rescue missions. It's a game then that truly puts the player in the captain's chair. Making decisions is what will determine the fate of their spacefaring civilization. Long-term viewers of this channel will know that exploration is something that I really do enjoy when it comes to games. But exploration comes in multiple forms. Sometimes it's exploring the horizon, exploring different planets and the cosmos. Other times it's exploring every mechanic that the game has to offer and discovering the various elements of the world around it. Everspace 2 then is one such game that invites players to delve deep into its universe, to uncover secrets, solve puzzles and engage with its lore. It's a game that encourages you to not just traverse its universe, but also to truly explore it, to uncover every hidden treasure, to solve every puzzle, and to engage with each piece of the lore. In short, the thing I enjoy the most about Everspace 2 then is the fact it's always leading you onto a new area or onto a new task. This might be the desire to explore a new asteroid, it might be a desire to take a look at the surface of a planet or dive down into whatever tunnel you come across, or it could simply be looking for more loot to constantly improve your ship and to continue to improve its power. This type of gameplay then, this type of exploration and discovery only really comes about when the developer has a laser focus on what it wants from its gameplay mechanics. It means you need a game that is very carefully crafted, where gameplay links into the design of the game world itself, something that we don't see too often with some of the larger space games. Now, the current giants of space games such as Elite Dangerous and EVE Online have at this point been around for an age. In recent times, they have both shown declines in player interest, partially because of their age and partially because ultimately, whilst these games initially provided compelling experiences, they failed to deliver or maintain the depth that many players were seeking. So, whilst on the one hand, indie devs are diving into deep focused gameplay to deliver compelling experiences, Starfield is taking a very different approach. It's a space game that is focused on both breadth and depth, and this is something that the current space game giants have struggled to achieve. Will Starfield be able to achieve this lofty goal? Well, who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments section. But my take is that it just might be able to pull this off. After all, Fallout 76 aside, Bethesda have a history of creating rich, living and breathing sandbox worlds that convey a sense of deep scope. And you know what? I'd go as far as saying that if, and this is a big if Bethesda are able to achieve their goals with Starfield, it will truly be the first space game that is not only a mile wide, but also a mile deep. 2023 then is turning out to be a very interesting year for the space genre. We're seeing on the one hand some of the genre going into decline. There is undoubtedly a decrease in interest in the giants such as Elite Dangerous. Meanwhile, Star Citizen is continuing to struggle with many of its updates and further dividing its player base. EVE Online, meanwhile, is continuing to stride along, but at this point it's undeniable that it is ancient. The future of the genre then seems to be in the hands of both the indie developers, who are creating some excellent games, only a handful of which were mentioned in this video. There are many more out there, as well as perhaps, hopefully, Bethesda as well with the Starfield. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings on all of this in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.